Hello, my dear friends, my lovely audiences. This is Jack Zhao, East West Show with G&E TV. Today, joining me are two wonderful friends that we go back many, many years. One of them is my dear friend, Betty Tom Chu of Monterey Park. When I say of Monterey Park, I'm not talking about she is only influential to Monterey Park. I say she lives in Monterey Park. Am I right? To be more precise. And she is the former mayor of Monterey Park for several times, all right, for N times. And she's the co-author of the Chinese-American World War II Veteran Congressional Gold Medal Act, the bill, all right? And then we'll talk about the bill when we finish this introduction. And next to her is my other friend, Zhang Ji. We go back many years also. Zhang Ji is the president of Chinese-American Citizen Alliance of Orange County for many years. And also he is the former mayor, former president for Chinese-American Citizen Alliance of Greater San Gabriel Valley.
Yes.
What's more important, he is the co-writer of the great bill, which is the bill for calls for Chinese-American World War II veterans to get congressionally recognized with a gold medal, right?
Yes.
Isn't that something great?
Yes.
Right? So to both of you, welcome to the show.
Thank
Thank you.
It was exactly about yesterday. I asked my friend Mark Liu of San Gabriel. I said, how come this year I heard very little about the commemoration of World War II? He said, I don't know. Shame on me, I did not know that there are people like you, working on these already. A Senate bill and House bill for the award, congressional award. So I want to start with you, Betty, please, with a little background story about yourself, starting with the concept of how you come out in the first place.
Well, when I was mayor of the city of Monterey Park, we would hold veterans events on November 11th and would also honor them on Memorial Day. And we had a American Legion in the city of Monterey Park. We would invite them to participate with us. During that time, I was instrumental in getting a monument to honor the American and Chinese Americans during World War II. And Congressman Royce had attended our meeting, so of course, Ed Royce. Of course, I wanted to emphasize the Chinese participation because we often hear about the European theater operation, but very little about the Chinese involvement in the Pacific theater and in the European theater.
Which is true, yeah.
So he was very impressed with it, and so we subsequently had a World War II Veterans Award ceremony, an event that was spanned over 3 weeks several years ago, in which Congressman Royce presented the medals to not only other World War II veterans, but also those with an emphasis on the Chinese Americans. And that was because during these events, I would hear from these members of the American Legion that where were the Chinese during World War II? I never saw any. He never saw any. They did not participate. So that was what gave rise to this bill, including the fact that oftentimes bills are written now that even though it's not intended, it does discriminate against our younger Chinese Americans. And we are hoping to bring this issue out so that everyone will understand that the Chinese and the Chinese Americans in America have been friends and loyal patriots of China and America for many, many years. And that's particularly important now when we are dealing with North Korea. When we are, and we are trying to get China to participate with us because of the clear and present danger of North Korea.
All right, very good, very well stated. Thank you very much. The fact is that history has it, but people forget.
That's correct.
That's the sorry part. All right. And I'll start with Mr. G about your side of the story. You were the former president of Orange County, a Chinese American Alliance.
Well, I'm the current president.
Oh, you're the current president. Oh, you were the former president for the Greater San Gabriel Valley.
Yes.
All right. You're a big shot.
No.
Come on.
How I got involved in this?
Yeah, you're not only involved. You're one of the 2 co-writers.
Well, yes, but how I started was that I have been researching famous Chinese. Contributors to the American economy, to business, to science, to the arts, to teaching and education. And looking at this, looking at, for instance, Delbert Wong, who is a retired judge. He won the Distinguished Flying Cross in Europe as a bombardier.
And he was a resident of Los Angeles.
Yes, and so
what a glory!
So I started looking at this, and I suddenly realized that the role of the Chinese in World War II is largely transparent. One, because there were only 100,000 of us in that era. 29,000 of us were in Hawaii, and the rest were in the United States. But yet, 20%, up to 20% of these people joined the armed forces. Some of whom were bachelors, and if they were killed, it would be the end of their lineage, and that was a lot. That was a great sacrifice. There are stories about some people who were in China at the time, a young lady who became a lieutenant and served as a nurse in China before coming to the United States. So it is an interesting story that I thought should be heard. And I thought that since the Filipinos and others received congressional gold medals for their service, I joined in with Betty because it was a good thing to do.
Yeah, like Betty, if I quote her, let's not discriminate anybody.
Right.
All right. And that's great involvement, great involvement. I thank you personally, I thank you very much. I believe on behalf of my audiences, we owe you a appreciation for such a great job. The thing is that, like I said in the beginning, when we were preparing the show, right? If you go to a store, I mean, like say bookstore, right? You come across all kinds of books to teach you how to make money, how to rob a bank or something like that, or even how to make a bomb, something like that. Anyway, and how many books can you find talking about this commemoration of those who knowingly that could be a mission of no return, right? Bravely went spearheaded to it, and some even died, right? I believe more died than survivors, right? So they are the ones, they deserve it. They deserve high recognition and congressional recognition. My dear audience, today we're talking about there are people who are responsible to history and who are also responsible to posterity. To let them know that in history we have those Chinese American war veterans who fought a big part in the World War II for world peace, right? By August 15, the commemoration marks the 72nd day anniversary of the ending. I believe it is right now the proper time to talk about it, the proper time to give you both the huge credit. Did you think so?
Yes. What is amazing, Jack, is the fact that 9% of the general American population served during World War II were either inducted or volunteered, enlisted to serve. Of the Chinese American population, as John mentioned, was a little over 100,000. But of that population, knowing that that could be the end of the lineage, there were 20%, as he had mentioned. When you compare the 20 to the 9%, and the fact that the lineage would be lost, and the Chinese Exclusion Act was still in existence, and when some of these young men first volunteered to enlist in the service, they were rejected because of discrimination.
Ironically, the Chinese Exclusion Act did not abolish until year of 1943.
Yes.
If I'm right, 1943.
Correct.
From 1882 to 1943, you're talking about more than 60 years. And during exactly the time interval, those Chinese stepped up, say, me, I'm in.
It was because of their volunteerism in World War II that with Madam Chiang Kai-shek's help, that was why the Chinese Exclusion Act got terminated. And had it not been for the Chinese Americans stepping up to the plate to fight, and was it not for Madam Chiang Kai-shek's enlisting the help of America, the Chinese Exclusion Act probably would have continued on.
Exactly, exactly. That was the turning point of history.
Yes.
Right? That was the turning point of history. From that point on, Americans and Chinese no longer enemies. We are fellow brothers, like that. We hand in hand against the Japanese, against the whoever, and we won the war.
Yes,
like that.
Because many of the Chinese Americans also served in the European theater operation, as well as the Pacific Theater, and as well as serving in China.
Yeah, Burma.
Yes, China, Burma.
Burma area for all like 100,000 of them already.
Well, the China, Burma, India theater had a lot of Chinese there. Okay, and because they provided the translation and logistical support for the American effort in China.
All right.
But, you know, Chinese fought in New Guinea. They were at Iwo Jima, Okinawa. A major, I think, an entire regiment helped invade the Philippines and take it back. At that invasion, there was a captain named Francis Wei, W-A-I. He won the Congressional Medal of Honor for taking over that beachhead, because it was like Normandy.
Like Normandy landing, yeah.
Yes. The fighting was so intense that he finally stood up and rallied the troops and formed a beachhead. He died on that beachhead.
But because of discrimination that was still existing, he was not originally...
Was not recognized.
Yes, he was not originally given the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Okay.
It was only later that they upgraded, and it wasn't until 2000, the year 2000, that his medal was upgraded.
We learn from history. We learn from history. Shame of history, glory of history, all the same time. You guys discovered. And today, my dear audience, with me are two wonderful individuals. They both are my very close friend. We have Betty Tom Chu of Monterey Park, residing in Monterey Park, and we have John G. in Orange County. Together, they co-wrote these two bills that calls for a congressional medal to be given, to be awarded to those World War II Chinese American veterans. A great move, great historical move, great concurrent move, and is a move to be responsible for our future generation, for posterity forever. All right, so let's take a very short moment now. When we come back, we want to focus to the interviews just happened up north that Betty did it. And you interviewed 6 of them, or what?
I interviewed 6, yes.
6, okay. We'll talk about them. All right, so stay with us, please. Hello, my lovely audience, my dear friends, my fellow Americans. Welcome back to the show, Jack Zhao on East West with G&E TV. For years, we kept on a tradition that every year in the month of August, we do several shows together to commemorate the World War II, to mark the victory on an anniversary basis of what we have done and what we have won, what we achieved. And of course, the dark days during the war we had experienced for history, for today, and for future, right? So thank God I have these many friends who are working and they are in their own pace towards the subject. They found out that a lot of people, Chinese American people who fought as a veteran of World War II, got not recognized, not awarded, whereas the same, like say they're from Philippines, right? They were recognized. So it is a Congressional Gold Medal Award that the Chinese American worldwide veterans for World War II were missing. So thanks to Betty Tom Chu of Monterey Park, thanks to John G. of Orange County. Now we have, they together co-drafted the bill, right? One Senate bill, one House bill, and that will be come into law for them to get this gold medal. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right.
Jack, so, I just wanted to tell you, I just recently moved to Orange County. I just sold my house in Monterey Park.
I like your house. Why didn't you sell to me? Formerly from Monterey Park.
Yes, we just sold the house last month.
You sold the house last month?
Yes.
Oh, you should check me. Jackie wanted? I'll give a discount for 50%.
Yes.
Oh, I wish. All right, good. And she had a beautiful house, very beautiful house. Mm-hmm. All right. Say something. We forgot to mention about what kind of medal, gold medal is that. I heard it's a collectible medal or a collectible honor. And how does it work, please?
There will be one gold medal or several that will be awarded, but only one awarded initially. And it will be displayed at the Smithsonian Institution so that those outside of the Chinese American community will be able to know the history of the Chinese Americans during World War II. Additionally, there will be the gold medals that will be available not only for research, but available to other museums or other places of interest of other Chinese Americans, duplicates to be for research purposes. In addition to that, there will be duplicates made in bronze for each family member of a World War II veteran and the World War II veterans themselves. But as you realize, there are very few of them that are still living today.
And you interviewed 6.
Yes, I just recently interviewed 6.
Let's hear some story about that.
Well,
because the way I look at it is that they are scarcely available, right? I'm looking at the time, 72 years already passed. Suppose if they were 20, back then it was 19. Well, year 92, right?
The individuals I interviewed were all over the age of 90 and ranged in age up to 95.
Wow.
And we were able to interview a Purple Heart recipient.
Wounded.
He was wounded. There were 50 people in his platoon, and all of them were killed except for 6. He was one of only 6 that survived. But he had served, and he had been wounded many other times.
What's his name? What's his glory?
His name is Kern Chu. He was a private first class, and he was a Chinese American 3rd generation. But he also had a brother who also served, whom I have not yet interviewed. Now, Kern served in the Pacific Theater operation. He was in the Philippines and in Japan and in Hawaii. His brother, though, on the other hand, served in the European theater operation. And then I had the fortune to interview another individual who was not an American citizen even. And he served in the war.
A volunteer.
A volunteer.
A volunteer.
And when he first volunteered, they rejected him because at that time, the Chinese Americans could not enlist in any of the military service. It was not until General Chanel...
Was that because of the Exclusion Act?
Yes, partly due to the Exclusion Act and partly because they felt that they could not distinguish between the Chinese and the Japanese. In fact...
You can't spell the last name.
Yeah.
Shame.
But what happened during that period of time was when they volunteered, they were rejected. Some of them flew over to China and joined the China Air Force to fight the war.
I see.
And in that fight, America finally recognized them and also gave them medals of honor as if they were in the United States military.
I see.
But what is very interesting is that this particular individual was short and he was a fast runner. So they engaged him as a runner because they thought that the Japanese, in seeing him, would think that he was one of them and he could safely get outside of the perimeter to wherever he needed to go to deliver the messenger. But he was trained in heavy artillery.
I see.
Heavy armament. But yet they chose him to be the messenger. And then he was placed in a certain place so that he was visible to the American Army and became well known to the American Army so that they wouldn't shoot him when he was running, would not think that he was Japanese.
Like a symbol.
Yes.
Like a symbol already.
He also won Bronze Star and won many other medals.
How old is he now?
He is 91 years old.
Okay, he was, back then he was 19.
Yes.
19.
And then we interviewed another individual, and some of them were not American citizens that volunteered to serve in the war. And remember, General Stilwell and General Chennault said, we cannot fight the war without Chinese Americans, and pleaded with President Roosevelt, who then allowed them to enlist and allowed them to be drafted into the war. So despite the fact that they were rejected initially, they still volunteered. And what is interesting is it's very much the philosophy of the military today. Fight them over in China. Get them over in China. Get them over in Europe so that they do not come to the American shores. But this particular individual became one of the few Chinese American prisoners of war.
Where?
He fought in the European theater.
European theater.
But he was in France.
Ah.
He was a prisoner of war. He was in Germany near the border, and he was told, they were told to go into the dense forest up the hill to chase the Germans out. So he did that, and they thought the Germans were gone. They were so tired from doing that, they jumped into the foxholes that were the German foxholes, and they fell asleep. But when they woke up to an alarm by one of the American soldiers that the Germans were coming,
they got captured.
One person stood up in his foxhole and was shot, killed in front of him. The two that he and his other American soldier jumped into the next foxhole, and into that next foxhole again.
That was a German, German
foxhole. They were the other guy that was in that foxhole got killed. So he saw two killings within the same period of time right in front of him. The only happy part about it was that when he became a prisoner of war, they were ordered to move boxes and cartons, lots of them, from the first floor to the third floor. So when they moved the boxes up to the third floor in transit, the guards did not follow them, and they found out they were chocolates. So they had their fill of chocolate.
Chocolate, okay,
yes.
Very good. That's
so
interesting.
That was an interesting story.
All right.
I also interviewed another gentleman.
Okay, let's take a little break here.
Okay.
And I love your stories. And do you have those pictures I probably can put on screen?
I will send them.
All right, very good. Okay, my dear audience, today we have the chance to talk about a big subject with my good friend Betty Tom Chu and John G, both of Orange County. Okay, so we'll take a short moment now. When we come back, we'll continue, please. Hello, my dear friends, my lovely audiences. This is the East-West Show with G&E TV. I'm your host, Jack Chow. My team try very hard to bring information which we believe necessarily you need to be informed. Still, in commemoration of World War II, the victory, last year we did big time. The year before we did big time on the 70 years of our mark. And this year, for the 72nd year, things are kind of relatively quiet, but not today. Until today, put it this way, right? Today I have Mr. John G of Orange County. Mr. John G is the president of the Chinese American Citizen Alliance of Orange County, and he was the former Chinese president of Chinese American Alliance of Greater San Gabriel Valley. And that's a big position, and I happen to know them, their activities quite a bit. And next to him is my good friend Betty Tom Chu of originally Monterey Park, now Orange County, because you abandoned Monterey Park, went to Orange County for better house, probably. I don't know. Anyway, she is the former mayor of the city of Monterey Park, and she is the co-writer of the Chinese American World War II Veteran Congressional Gold Medal Act, and where he is the other co-writer. So wonderful.
Right.
I have only two co-writers here, both with me. So once again, I have to say welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. I believe that the interview stories are wonderful, right? So they are vivid. I like the short guy already. Kern, right? The first one, the Kern.
the first one is Kern Chu.
Yeah, Kern
And
Chu.
the second one was Robert Fong.
Robert Fong, and he was the one captured, I mean, as a POW in France.
No, he was the POW was Ken Ma, and the runner was Robert Fong.
Okay. Before you continue with the story, let me ask Zhang Ji one more question. To people an average age of, say, 40 and below, how much do you think, how many, or by percentage of them are aware of this part of history?
Not very many.
Not very many.
Matter of fact, not very many people at the age of 40 and below understand now that there were World War II involved two theaters, the European and the Pacific. It is probably the failure of our public school system not educating them on World War II.
Especially when the Japanese tries to deny whole history, though, you lost another part, a big part.
Yes.
So if this part, our side, keeps on the silent, and then the whole world will be silent.
That's correct.
That is correct. The other thing, I don't want to lead anybody off on a tangent, but you know, the Japanese have never apologized for Pearl Harbor.
Of course, that's exactly what I wanted to emphasize with you today. Right? And the other day, I had this interview with lady Phyllis Kim.
Yes.
Yes.
We know Phyllis.
You know her, right?
Yes. In fact,
Phyllis
we
Kim
worked with
talking
her.
about the monument for comfort women. Both she and I, we cried for those poor women.
It was actually John who introduced the fact that Phyllis was involved with the Comfort Women, and so we became involved with Phyllis Kim when the Japanese were trying to remove the Comfort Woman statue from Glendale. And we led.
And somebody even received the death calls. I mean, death threats.
Yes.
Yes.
Am I right?
And I received from a friend who told us that we should not become involved if we wanted more peace in our lives.
If you wanted to live.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Something like that. They are understand. And also, there's another gentleman named Mark Liu.
yes, we know
You
Mark.
know Mark Liu,
yeah,
right?
I worked with Mark.
Ah, right.
And I've worked with Phyllis.
We're a whole group. Right. Mark Liu, Phyllis Kim, all my friends, because we push for the same pursuit. Right?
Yes.
Push the Japanese for a official apology, and also money, war money. Okay, now go back to your story, please.
Well,
Interview story, I mean.
what is very interesting is one of the other gentlemen that I interviewed, a gentleman by the name of Su Bun Chan.
Su Bun Chan.
Yes, he had been so traumatized by that war, and he knew Robert Fong. Both of them went into the service about the same time. They had grown up together. But he does not tell the story of his involvement in World War II very often. And he certainly didn't tell it to receive a Medal of Honor or recognition during the time they were giving recognition to the World War II veterans in Sacramento. But he was willing to come and talk to me. And his story was very simple, but he could not complete his story because he was still overwhelmed by emotions of what he remembered during the war.
And the PTSD lasts forever.
And he also had volunteered and enlisted. So out of that, the other interesting interview was a woman who was an American American by birth, Chinese by heritage.
I see.
And she volunteered during the war and was not sent overseas, but was an assistant.
As a nurse?
No, she was an assistant in a hospital to assist the nurses.
I see.
In New York.
Okay.
But her husband was a non-citizen and who tried to enlist in the war and was turned down because of the discrimination, and he did go over to China to serve, and then later on he did serve in the U.S. military.
How heroic.
So we have a number of different circumstances and stories. A woman, we have men, we have American citizens, and we have those that are non-citizens fighting in the war, those who were discriminated, not allowed to be in the war, and those that subsequently were allowed to be in the war. We have Purple Heart recipients, we have Bronze Star recipients. So just these 6 stories, we were able to cover that.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great job. The way I see it, that in spite of discrimination, in spite of the Exclusive Act, in spite of the forbidden to be illicit, they go even circumvented to get enlisted, right?
Right.
So that all these messages indicate one thing, that people want peace. People do not want war. They hate wars, right? They want to end the war. And of course, we do not know. We will never know these stories. But for you. So, glory to you.
And we would invite the Chinese Americans and the Chinese who have stories of this type to write to us about their stories so that we can get it into the Library of Congress at some time, and you will then let the people know about how they can contact us either by email or by mail. And
the email is exactly at the bottom of your screen, that you can send their story, your story, or your grandpa's story, or your next door neighbor's story, or whoever's story. So see that email, you send a story too. So my dear audience, I really wish to hear all the 6 stories, but we got to wrap up this segment because the next segment, we got another issue to talk about. So probably next time.
But can we show the Senate Bill 1050 and House Resolution 2358, spearheaded with the efforts of Congressman Ed Royce?
All right.
Thank you.
When you see these numbers, please, keep that in mind. These are the masterpiece of my 2 friends, Betty and John. So we'll be right back. Hello, my dear friends, my lovely audiences. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. You, my fellow Americans, you are welcome back to the show. With me, to my glory, I'm joined by my dear friend, Betty Tom Chu, and Mr. John G. They both are the co-writers, the only 2 co-writers of these 2 beautiful bill, the Senate bill and the House bill, that's calling for Congressional Gold Medal to be awarded to the Chinese American World War II veterans. Most of them are over. Now, if they still alive, they are over 90 years old. And I mean, scarcely they are there. May God bless them, let them live longer and longevity. But anyway, reality. We got to hurry up to work. We want to make sure that they see the medal themselves when they are still alive, right?
Yes.
Correct.
So, all right, very good. Thanks to my dear friends, Betty and John. I really want to take advantage of your visit to my studio. Because the way I understand was that you guys kind of like to afford your time and efforts going into history. Now that when you are going into history, shall we stretch a little deeper to find out what happened with Robert E. Lee time, whose statue is being a big hot topic these days. So how much do you know about Robert E. Lee, please?
Well, Robert E. Lee was a colonel at the time of the start of the Civil War. Surprisingly, President Lincoln wanted to make him the area commander around Washington to defend Washington. Robert Lee couldn't do that because he had a greater loyalty to Virginia, and it was a hard decision for him. His background, by the way, is interesting. His father fought with George Washington. Two of his close relatives, I think uncles, signed both the Declaration of Independence, and one of them signed the formation of the U.S. Constitution. Lastly, he was married to someone named Mary Custis. She is the granddaughter of Martha Washington. So that's what I know about Robert E. Lee.
Okay. And Betty, you are encyclopedia to me. How much do you know about Robert E. Lee, please?
I know far less than John knows about Robert E. Lee. But when I really was amazed at the violence that occurred with reference to the statue.
All right.
But I became a little bit more interested in becoming involved when Robert Lee was reassigned from calling a particular football game in Virginia and reassigned to another football game simply because of his name of Robert Lee. As you know, Jack, there are many Asians named Lee, and many of them are named Robert Lee. Some are Koreans, many of them are Koreans, many of them are Chinese, and there are other Asians, as well as Caucasians that may be named Robert Lee, or other ethnicities named Robert Lee. And in my opinion, ESPN did not handle the issue poorly, because by reassigning Robert Lee, it seemed to give the impression to many people that it's all right to discriminate based upon the name, or to reassign a person because of the name. And when that comes out on TV, I was concerned about our young people who are in school by the names of Robert Lee, that if you can reassign them, you can bully them, you can make fun of them, and I think that ESPN owes it to all the other Robert Lees to come back on television and voice that it is not appropriate behavior to discriminate against an individual or take action.
To discriminate that many Robert Lee.
Yes.
All right, good. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you know, one of the things that we have with the internet and with Instagram and Twitter,
social network,
is bullying and shaming efforts. And that it is the responsibility of someone like ESPN to make a statement about that it is not right, that it is something that is very difficult, but we are right now in an era where, damn you and your horse you rode into. Well,
all right, okay.
And one of the humorous ones is that at USC they have a horse
and
named Traveler.
we are both graduates of USC.
USC. All right.
And there's a movement to change Traveler's name.
The horse.
The horse.
The horse, yeah.
You know why? Because Robert E. Lee's horse was named Traveler. So it's gotten to somewhat extreme here.
All right, I agree with you in this aspect. By the way, whatever I say is totally my personal point of view and my own opinion. Doesn't represent the show, neither does it to the organization. I say a name is a name, right? We don't want to be oversensitive about a thing. For example, the Great Wall of China was built over 2,000 years ago by Qing Dynasty, by Qin Dynasty, Q-I-N, by Qin Dynasty, in the methods of slaughter, enslavement, suppression, exploitation, all kinds, right? But now it stands as a symbol of China. So do you think that's more a symbol of human wisdom, or do you think it's a symbol more for Emperor Qin?
You know, that's what's wrong with society today.
However, people try to make a point with it, right? I don't think it's necessarily to overturn it. I'm to turn it down. Just leave it there. It's history anyway.
It's whether you look at the glass as being half full, which is a positive.
Yeah, that's my personal opinion.
Or you look at it as a glass being half empty, which is the negative.
Do you think so, John?
Well, yeah, but here's your problem, I think, is that if you look at the public media, there is no longer an Eric Sevareid or Cronkite or a Huntley or Brinkley. A lot of the media have become advancers of their own opinion.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And people
money driven. Okay, put it this way, money driven.
But they have created a very shallow audience in terms of knowledge and depth. Well, these people look at things like Traveler, who was the horse of Robert E. Lee and Robert E. Lee himself and so forth, as a metaphor.
All right.
And the metaphor is not good, but they never delve into the facts.
But the metaphor is being enlarged.
Yes, it is overblown.
Yes. Overblown.
Yes.
And the same thing to Betty. I mean, I'm going to ask you, was the turning down necessary?
Was the turning down
of Robert Lee statues?
No, I do not believe that was necessary.
Okay, now
it's the same thing with reference to the World War II monuments. You can look at the World War II monuments and say, that was tragic, and America shouldn't have done this and killed so many people, et cetera, et cetera. But yet it can also stand to represent the horrible...
The question behind it is that why would the people just make a resolution to turn them down? So did they made the resolution by mistake, or did they make the resolution with the purpose
animus
behind it? Yes.
Animus.
Yeah, animus.
Well, it is a difficult time because
knowingly there's going to be a rebound.
Yes.
Right. Let's do it and let them rebound, and then, all right, let's stir it up, something like that.
Yes.
Yes.
You agree with it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So
it is a difficult time because the United States is going into an era of change.
All right.
And part of that problem is because of economics. Part of it is history. You know that the South has been its own culture for a very long time and did not change until after 5 or 10 years after the Civil Rights Act. And it was always Dixie because it goes all the way back to states' rights.
Sure, exactly.
And the center on we are more for our own state than the United States.
Do you think, Betty, the statue may represent two concepts? Number one, it might represent the fight of South for forced slavery over the North, right?
Yes.
It could represent his guts to surrender to the right cause.
Correct.
Now, what if I say, hey, the way I look at him, all right, I thank him for surrendering at the right time to save lots of time not to die, something like that. It could be that.
Yes, that's why I say you look at the glass, it's either half full or
Yeah,
or
of course, how you look at it.
half
right?
empty.
Or look at-
But the problem is that I find that in today's social media, it has evolved to where people either imagine things other than just overstating.
And the Trump administration is doing a very terrible job in this whole issue. And the New Yorker magazine even had a page on the front page for Donald Trump blowing a sail that has two holes represent the Ku Klux Klan, their helmet thing, like
But
that's kind
again,
of boat.
I think that is overstatements.
Somebody big is behind it,
Yes.
Yes.
right? Somebody big is behind it.
Yes.
Well, you know,
Oh my God, we're over time. we over. All right. Anyway.
But that
Okay.
is very interesting.
That's a reality.
It is part of a concerted effort to stop what is happening under the White House.
Somebody big
happening.
is behind it,
yes.
right? Okay,
Yes.
very good.
Yes.
All right, my dear audience, we are over time, but I'm very happy for this being over time. My appreciation goes heavily to Betty Tom Ju and to John G. Both are my close friend of Orange County. And my dear friends, my dear audience, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.